Welcome to Riverdale After Dark, a podcast about the CW's Riverdale that's doing a little bit of a toss back to our old classic comic book selves. I'm Alex.
When you dwell in the darkness for as long as I have, it's sometimes good to look back at all the other 99 darknesses you've had and be like, you know what? They were pretty fun. I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we are going to be talking about Season 6, Episode 5, Chapter 100, The Jughead Paradox, the 100th episode of Riverdale, and way past the 100th episode of Riverdale After Dark. We blasted past them. We did 100 episodes a while ago. We did our whole alternate universe event thing. You guys probably checked up on it. You know what we're talking about.
Yeah, you know what we're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what I'm talking about either. So I'll tell you what, I think what we should probably do, there's not a lot of recap you need to know necessarily for this episode, technically speaking, other than the fact that they've been for the past 4 episodes previous to this in a alternate universe event called Rivervale, which is very Twilight Zone-esque. Dark things have been happening to folks. It all seemed to kick off with a bomb that went off in Archie's bedroom when Betty and Archie were hooking up at the end of Season 5. We get the repercussions of that here, and then, spoiler, but we kick into Riverdale at the end of this episode. The other thing, just very briefly to mention, because it's really more about the relationships that are set up here rather than the actual plot. They've been very anthologized. You get Jughead is with Tabitha, living with Tabitha. Betty and Archie are together when we get in here. Cheryl is on her own. Tony and Fangs are together, raising baby Anthony. And Kevin is on his own. Also, Reggie and Veronica are together. So that's sort of the lay of the land, and that's kind of sort of all you need to know. But Pete, you have a question right off. What's going on?
Well, I didn't appreciate, please excuse me, I'm not feeling well, but...
should we mention Pete is dying of a broken heart after watching this episode?
Yes. Also,
there's some truth to that, I think.
I didn't appreciate you saying that they were hooking up. We don't know what they were doing in the bedroom when the bomb went off, so I don't appreciate you.
They were kissing and taking their shirts off. What were they doing, Pete?
I don't know. We weren't there.
Could be a tick check. Very responsible. That's a good thing to do. Maybe a mole. Like, let me see if that mole's looking
There's a
weird.
lot of
you should go to the dermatologist.
Betty's in the FBI. She's in the FBI. And he's a fireman, so maybe she's a fireman body inspector.
The FBI? That's the FBI. I mean, it would make more sense if she was a fireman body inspector than a member of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I agree with you there.
So there is so much to unpack in this episode because it is so wildly over the top in not even, I was about to say classic Riverdale fashion. It's so beyond.
Yeah, it gets a little too meta at points where I was just like,
Let me say, this show did what we've said it would do for years. Mm-hmm. They finally said, hey, we're on the TV show Riverdale. That's a joke we've made for literally years, and they did it. It's like they did it. I've worked for 2 years on this, and they just tweeted it.
Well,
that's what happened.
Before we get through the specific plot points, I'd love to talk about how you felt about the Rivervale event as a whole. I think we've been pretty positive about it. And then generally speaking, well, except for you, Pete, and then generally speaking, what we thought about this episode before we walk through it, because again, so many things go on here. Justin, you've been on the positive side. How do you feel this wrapped up as we go back into Riverdale for the rest of Season 6?
I have loved the Rivervale event, and it just shows how this show is one of the most creative shows on TV. It feels like it really just pushes its own envelope so hard all the time. I really appreciate that about the show. And it's been, above all, just fun. It feels like everyone on the show is just like having fun, operating at the top of their potential, while also paying off all these huge emotional things. And like, to quote Pete, playing with our emotions in a way that I really like.
And now for the counterpoint, we'll go to Pete LePage.
All right.
Great choice.
What was tough was in the last episode, they won me over. But then after this, they kind of won me over. But I do.
Lost you,
man. Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I wish there was an opposite
appreciate
word for one. But.
I do appreciate what Justin is saying. There is a lot of fun moments in this Rivervale shit. A lot of kind of like, just like, let's take what's great about the show and showcase it. Like having 3 Cheryls throughout time was really cool. They do play with our emotions, which was really fucked up. But they also kind of, everybody gets a little moment here when it comes to the coupling and that kind of stuff. So at least it doesn't seem like it's all torture.
Wow. Faint praise from Pete LePage.
Not torture. Yes. Pete LePage. Put it on the season.
I'll send it to the CW, yeah. I really like this as well. I do understand that I think it confused and frustrated some fans, particularly with the last episode, which, mind you, I loved, but people tried to figure out, how does this connect to Riverdale? How does this connect to the continuity of Riverdale? What exactly is going on here? With it in the rearview mirror, it's still a little hard to say because we haven't seen how the plots pan out through the rest of season 6. But at the same time, I do think the idea here was they were just having fun. They were doing 5 fun, weird, incredibly dark Archie horror comic book style stories, and they had a good time. And if those do pan out, I've talked a lot about how I think we might see some of the emotional intent of what happened here pan out through the rest of the season. And I still think that, but we're not going to see things like Abigail died in Riverdale. She's not suddenly an immortal witch. She's actually Cheryl. That's not a thing that's going to happen.
Oh, fuck you.
No, but
the things that happen here, and also I think some of the things in this episode lay the groundwork for what we're going to see the characters go through. So like we talked about with the last episode, I think that's a really good example of that could potentially affect Cheryl in certain ways to say, no, you know what? This curse needs to be behind me. I am past this curse. I need to go after Tony or whatever it is that I want. Or here in this episode, we get a lot of moves, in particular with Veggie, kind of, but Barchi and Bughead are probably the big ones that are featured here. And I think it does indicate in certain ways where we potentially are headed over the course of the season. A little less so, say, on Jabitha, who just get one very nice domestic scene in here. But I do think even that sort of points to that's the mode that we're going to see them in a while for throughout the rest of the season. They're pretty solid.
Before we get to that night, that little moment, I mean, that almost brought me to tears. A significant other who is like willing to sit down and read comics because you were like, you got to check out this storyline. I was so moved by that. Like, I could not believe how great Tabitha.
Pete's loving it.
You're on board. You're on the Tabitha ship now, Pete.
Shut the fuck up. I do really hope that moving forward, Cheryl is a witch, because I don't know how you could go back on that once you kind of give us a little peek into that Pandora's box. I mean, that has to be canon moving forward.
But I think, to your point, Alex, this episode felt like it was almost exclusively looking backwards. It was like looking at the whole series as a whole and being like, look at how wild this is. Look at everything that we can do. And as a creative on the show, I feel like they must be like, it's just like a taking stock and enjoying everything that they've made, which I think is great, because it seems to me that we're going to pick up from the moment, the end of last season going forward pretty cleanly. And like you said, there'll be emotional ramifications. I think Cheryl's feelings are really well encapsulated in the last episode, and I think we'll see that vibe going forward for Cheryl. Same with sort of everybody. Like I said last time, feels like a lot of these horror stories are playing on the anxieties of the characters that are featured in them.
Or the audience.
I think we share a lot of the characters' anxieties. Like, I think, especially Cheryl, it's like, I'm never going to find someone. I'm always going to be alone. I think everybody feels that at some point in their life. And So we feel that, Cheryl feels that, and that's where she is going forward. Tony, I'm having a kid. This is stressful, and we see that play out with the naturally with becoming a water demon and living in a swamp.
Yeah, that's a pretty typical plot line. Yes, absolutely.
I lived in a swamp before I had kids.
Yeah, well, you were Shrek, right?
I was a Shrek. I'm not capital S Shrek. I'm one of many Shreks in a Shrek.
But as people who have children, at some point when your child is crying all night, you think about leaving them in the woods, right? I mean, that just has to
heal
happen.
them. Only to heal them, because that's a normal thing that all parents do at some point.
Okay, all
right. There were two things they told me in the hospital when I took my kids home. The first one was don't shake your kids. The second one was leave them on a stump if they ever cry.
Yeah.
So
you can never shake your kids? How are you supposed to get gold coins to come out?
I don't even know is that a piggy bank? I don't even know what the analogy you're making.
You put gold coins in a piggy bank? Oh.
Yeah. Attention, Philadelphia robbers. Find Pete LePage. He's getting out a pot of gold.
Straight up dragoning over here. Why don't we jump into the episode and talk through this? I think it's worthwhile walking through this one bit by bit because so many things happen, as I mentioned earlier. But we kick it off with a crazy thing right off. Jughead is dead on a road out of Rivervale holding a comic book. And then we get this great montage where everybody is having nightmares. They're waking up. Archie is back. Betty had a nightmare about the sacrifice from the first episode. Fangs had a dream about Tony as a ghost. She immediately asked, was I trying to hurt baby Anthony? Which I thought was a really nice emotional moment. Yeah. In the middle of this montage. Veronica had a dream, also did Cheryl and Nana Rose. So we get all of that, and then we get...
Nana Rose.
What about Nana Rose, Pete?
She's so fucking creepy, man.
Yeah. She is. Well, she was just wearing a nightgown and scared in the middle of the night.
I had a dream, Cheryl. I'm a nightmare. I am a nightmare. We're all in my nightmare.
Well, anyway, see you later. Fades back into the walls with Penelope.
Yeah, oh my God.
So then we cut over to Jughead, who hears a mysterious ticking noise. The bomb goes off, and he wakes up in Archie's garage with his feet bleeding. This, to me, is the first thing that really points to something was wrong with reality. Beyond all of the, resets that are happening with these nightmares, Jughead keeps moving around to different places. And I thought this was an interesting and purposely off-putting way of setting it up.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ever wake up with your feet bleeding, you should seek medical attention.
I agree. Thank you. And Pete, you're a doctor, right?
Nope.
But
I play a really creepy coroner, so.
I did also like the moment immediately following that where Jughead comes home, he sleptwalk, and Tabitha's like, hey, what's going on? You came in from the wrong door.
Every house has a right door and a wrong door.
Yes. And it turns out he's kind of forgotten what's going on. It's his first day back at school. And then we get another great montage here. Pete.
What was that 16 Candles music playing?
It's
from
Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club. Okay.
It was one of those. Famous Judd Nelson, one hand up. Don't you?
I'm surprised you don't remember that, Pete. That's Punching the Air. Do you love punching?
I do.
Yeah. But before we go further, I just want to say one thing. The comic book, all the comic book references in this episode feels like what I was saying before about this sort of looking at the series as a whole. It goes even further back to be like, this was a comic book first, and really paying homage to that throughout this episode. I thought was really cool.
We'll get to that in a moment. Let's not peek too early on the comic book talk.
Wow, Pete doing a rare calling out Justin for jumping ahead of the plot.
Doesn't happen. Truly, we are in Rivervale after dark ourselves, if this is where we are.
So yeah, Don't Forget About Me plays, and he sees everybody dressed from the pilot. Even Tony is there. He sees Jughead. We get a shot of Archie with Grundy winking.
Why can't we forget that? Why would you do that to us?
Because it happened, man. I love it.
You could we don't need that shot.
I do think what was helpful...
We don't need that shot.
I don't want to be reminded of that plot line either, but at the same time, I think that sets us very clearly in time because, granted, we see Cheryl in a cheerleader's uniform, but we also see Tony, who was not there until midway through season 2, so it's very confusing. So this sets it, knowing that Grundy is there, knowing that Archie was Grundy, we know we're back at the beginning. This is definitely the pilot.
Could have done it any other way.
Okay. What other way would you have done it, Pete?
Don't you forget about Grundy.
And then we're going to do another big return here right towards the beginning of the episode. Benjamin Button shows up.
So here we go, where it was like, hey, you thought that Grundy thing was fucked up. Hey, remember Ben? And then Ben was like, I'm not the only one to jump out of a window. Let's flash back to that other really fucked up time where a teacher jumped out the window. I was just like, what are we doing right now, people?
Reminding people of the whole series. Like, that's what they were trying to do the whole episode.
Of all the lowlights, though? I mean, can't we just...
Well, I think this
lights,
is showing...
baby.
So first of all, bringing Benjamin Button back immediately shows Jughead beyond seeing everybody as their younger selves.
Benjamin Button back.
Yeah. Well, first of all, he ages backwards. We know that. So that's an important detail to mention right here. And then the second detail is this tells Jughead that dead people are coming back to life, something that he probably is putting together in the back of his mind but doesn't realize until he physically sees Benjamin Button. The Stonewall Prep dude, I'm forgetting the name of the character, but Sam Witwer's is the name of the actor, jumping through the window. I think that was just a way of touching on season 3, which otherwise we don't really see anything of here.
But I, to your point, Pete, like, yeah, we're seeing some stuff where it's like out of context. It's like, oh, wait, what? Especially when they show us the shot. It's like that teacher just dove through a stained glass window, sort of out of nowhere in their original episode. And it's especially out of nowhere now. But this show owns every moment. The fact that they have a character named Benjamin Button is insane from off the jump. And the fact that they then are like, remember him? And then he comes back is no other show would do that. That's why.
I'll also mention, just based on seeing the flashback and them in the current time, he's gotten pretty jacked. He's definitely been working out, you know?
Yeah,
he's
much
bigger.
Jacked Button.
Jacked
Strong Button.
Mm-hmm. Have you been to that place in the garment district, Jacked Buttons?
Jacked buttons, exactly. It's only for the jacked. You're jacked, the buttons are jacked. There's little abs on every
sorry,
button.
I got too muscly and I popped the buttons off of my suit again. You got any jacked buttons for me?
Yeah, bro, I got all the buttons you need. I'm the most jacked.
Pete loves this. Let's move on to another part that I'm
Pete's
sure Pete
like, I'm sick and I'm listening to this.
Please don't make me sit through this, says Pete LePage. So let's move on to something that you'll enjoy more, Pete. Betty and Archie are getting married, and Jughead is the best man. That's something that we find out here. Jughead has completely forgotten about this. So what did you think about this framing the episode on Betty and Archie getting married? Justin?
I thought it was cool. Again, it makes me a little nervous because if we're doing all this Archie stuff in Rivervale, it starts to make me get a little worried about it happening in Riverdale. Because at Rivervale, going away, Riverdale continuing on. So I definitely want to make sure we're not eating all of our Archie lunch just
enjoy
in
it now because it's over.
I don't think so. I think we are firmly in a time of Archie. Jughead's going to be happy with Veronica. That's definitely happening. But I do think
is canon now.
Bughead is canon. I think that when the characters say it on the show, it must be true.
Yeah. Iconic Veronica line. Not to jump ahead there, but
so good.
Amazing.
But what I want to say is this references, I think, a famous comic book storyline as well, in which Archie, there was two separate storylines, one in which Archie married Veronica, finally chose Veronica, and one in which Archie married Betty. And I think we're seeing that on screen here.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. So anyways, then Jughead sees his own dead body.
Wait. I don't want to jump ahead. One of my absolute favorite moments of the episode, which is Dr. Curdle calls Betty on the phone and is like trying to tell her that he has Jughead's corpse. And she immediately is like, you're just doing this because you weren't invited to the wedding. Goodbye. Please stop harassing me. It made me laugh out loud. I love the idea that Dr. Curdle is like, invite me to the wedding, Betty, please.
Yeah, what was the concert shirt he was wearing?
It was
the Josie.
Josie.
He's a big fan of Josie.
Will Josie be there?
He has helped Betty out a lot. Like, I can understand his upset about not being invited to the wedding, but
they have a transactional relationship. Are you inviting your pizza guy to your wedding, Pete?
Maybe.
All right, he does provide you pizza.
I would invite my, the guy who makes my Philly cheesesteak.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice. Above one of us? Like, what's your order? Because, you got to make choices. You can't, if you're going to have a wedding, you got to make cuts here and there. And if you're inviting Philly cheesesteak guy, pizza guy, your gyro guy, your hero guy, like, it's a lot of guys.
Hoagies, bro. I'm in Philly now. It's Hoagies.
Okay. Hoagies. You probably got your old New York hero guy. You got your Philly hoagie guy.
Yeah, for him, it's a destination wedding.
Exactly. Wow, what a trip from Brooklyn to Philly. Of course, in Jersey, you got your grinder guy. You got to have this. You got a whole sandwich mafia.
Yep.
Oh, man.
So, so Jughead sees himself.
How many morticians do you want at your wedding? One, maybe. Yeah. You can't have like multi mortician. Even if you're in the mortician business, it's like, hey, let's not bring out the whole formaldehyde crew.
So, very fun scene there. And then, as Pete mentioned, Jughead goes and sees his own body. And then Dr. Curdle helpfully sets up kind of the concept of the episode. He points out it's a paradox. Jughead was strangled and left on the lonely highway. And then we had a neat little thematic thing that I saw going through the episode. So Jughead takes his own clothes, and over the course of the episode, he regresses costume-wise, which I thought was kind of neat. He goes from his season 5, end of season 5, season 6 teacher outfit to ultimately being pretty much in a high school version of Jughead, complete with the jacket and everything else. So he's going backwards in time, even as everybody else is kind of pushing forwards in time. And I thought that was kind of neat. It was a very subtle thing that they didn't really point to, but it was set up there as he takes the clothes. Yes.
Also, it was an interesting dangling thread when Jughead was hitchhiking his way back to Riverdale on the Lonely Highway. We thought maybe he would get murdered, so it was interesting that he ends up dead on the Lonely Highway.
There you go. But it also brings our Jughead, or Rivervale Jughead, I guess, to the Rivervale sign. On one side, there's an infinity sign, and it says, "There's no place like home," reference to the classic film The Wiz. And then on the flip side is Riverdale backwards with the home of Pops, the regular sign. But it starts once again, kind of jogs Jughead's memory, and he realizes something is very wrong. He takes out the clothes, finds an issue of Rivervale titled The Jughead Paradox. And that gets back to the comic book thing that you were mentioning earlier, Justin.
That's what you call a clue. And even if you don't have your Betty in your Bughead detective agency, he still found that clue, and he did what you do with all clues is read them. Read the clues.
All right, so here we get Jughead, going to the comics, to kind of look up to see what was happening. And this is the part that was just really upsetting for me. First, we had this thing earlier in the episode. I wasn't sure how many episodes it was ago, where Archie made the comment like, Jughead, I didn't realize you were this much of a comic collector, which is very insulting. If somebody's going to say that they collect comics, they're going to have a fucking bunch of boxes with comics in them. Okay, that's just what's going to happen. The fact
nobody has just one comics. They're like potato chips.
Yeah, if you say you collect comics, you're going to have a fucking bunch of white boxes and, a shit ton of space that you need to store them. So then
you hate Archie because of that.
Yeah, it bothered me. And then you have a Jughead being a comic book collector who doesn't have any bags and fucking boards in his white boxes. Are you fucking kidding me? It's just sitting there getting worse with time and disintegrating and not taking care of something that fucking saves the fucking day. Very upsetting.
I mean,
not a comic book collector at all. Archie was right.
Archie was right. Hashtag. I got to say, Pete, I agree with you because these aren't just regular comics. These are magic comics that tell the past and future. I would put a bag around it. You want to hold on to that thing. You want a mint condition.
You're not wrong, Pete. You're not wrong.
You could say like, okay, they don't want to have the bags and boards because of the film and the, the light might come off thing. Fine.
Yeah, that's why.
If you're a fucking comic book person, you throw in a line there that says like, I did have them bagged and boarded or something like that. It's just a throwaway fucking line to give us something because it's a fucking slap in the face to real comic book collectors.
As you've referenced before, maybe a title card could pop up.
Yes. Previously bagged and boarded, something
removed
like that.
for production purposes. Yeah. That wouldn't break the story.
Previously bagged and boarded. Cat's fine.
I want to say cat's fine.
Cat's fine.
Cat's fine.
When are we going to know
man.
the fate of this cat? How many more eps?
The Toffee Paradox.
Yeah.
If you notice, one of the covers did have a cat briefcase on it. Saw a real quick
Stop.
flash.
Dude, that
With
cat
Toffee.
briefcase.
that was a spin-off miniseries, I believe.
Exactly. Everybody loved it. Well, I thought you were going to say, Pete, it's very strange to me that Jughead's like, I found all these comics, and I started with issue 95 and read 4 of them. I was like, read from number 1, dude. That's where the story begins.
He did begin from number 1, right?
No, he said he started at 95 and then went back. Eventually,
And
went
then went
back.
back.
And read
Okay.
all of them.
Well, because 90 that one was the one that said Rivervale, but then he went back. Yeah.
I did really like the infinite recursive loop page that he finds at the end. That is
so
very
cool.
MC Mesher, very fun. Followed by the blank pages there, and just to continue to talk about this comic book thing. I loved all the details there. I mean, Roberto Aguirre Sacasa didn't start in comic books. He started in theater, but he started with his love of comic books, came up through Archie Comics, helped rejuvenate the brand. So really digging into these ideas of how comics work, but also kind of how TV works, which I'm sure we'll get to the Reggie thing in a second. I thought it was so smart and so fun to talk about how these things do reboot. They do change. The title changes. Sometimes there's 0.5 issues that take place between issue 95 and issue 96. All of these things. I thought it was really fun, and it did. We're all comic book fans here, so I think it really did very appropriately pay tribute to the comics, like Pete was mentioning earlier, the place that this all came from.
And I thought it was the best example. I mean, in an entertainment industry now that is driven by comics across movies, TV, everything, this I thought was the best way of showing that connection and why it works and why so much of our storytelling now is based on comic books. Episodic, the fact that you can reboot it, the fact that you can always have different machines spinning at the same time and characters coming back, losing them, bringing them, like however it works. Like this really felt like almost like a signpost to be like, this is how we tell stories right now across the whole pop culture.
Pete, were you going to say something? Or
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Were you going to grumble something?
I was going to grumble something, but you know.
And now it's time for a section we call Pete's Grumbles. All right, over to Pete. Okay, let's continue to walk through this. So Jughead tells Tabitha about the comics, similar to a lot of the episodes of the Rivervale stuff. I love that everybody accepts it.
She immediately drops what she's doing and then sits down and reads the comic. And I mean, that was just so powerful. And I was just like, I've been so wrong about Tabitha. She is the greatest character on Riverdale, maybe. I mean, that was just, here's a person who's clearly being crazy, can't keep, is all over the place, realizes we're in a parallel universe. And then Tabitha's like, Jughead, I will sit down and read your comics that you think is great. And I was just so moved and touched by that moment.
I feel like this is speaking to maybe a personal issue in your life when it comes to loved ones maybe not taking as much interest in comic books.
Maybe there's some past stuff there. Sure.
What would you do if somebody handed you...
Wait. You've never been in a relationship or met somebody and been like, oh my God, this reminds me of this comic, what we're talking about or whatever, and you try to make reference to it, and then for some reason the person won't then read. You know what I mean?
I think your problem, Pete, is you're dating jocks.
Oh, okay. Probably, yeah.
Have your girlfriends generally been stuffing you into lockers and giving you wedgies and stuff?
Yeah,
he takes a lot of wedgies.
100%.
A lot of in-relationship wedgies. Isn't the rarest wedgie an in-relationship wedgie? Very
the worst kind of wedgie.
Yeah, that means that's a real. It's
Pete,
a wedgie
you were telling me right on the first date with your current girlfriend, she took you to a wedgitorium and
yeah,
right?
No, yeah,
man, I don't know how they stay in business, but they're making money literally hand over fist.
They're right next door to Jack Button's, actually. They have a deal if you go to both.
You want to stop by the Wedgitorium after
work? So then we go to Veronica.
Wait, hold on. I do want to ask, if somebody came up to you and a friend of yours, it was like, hey, this is crazy. I just found 100 comic books that are all about our lives. What would your reaction be?
I would fucking read the comic book.
And then that's it.
I would calmly read the comic book, offer a review online, and that was it. I'd go about my business. I'd be like, yeah, I'm here for it. I believe my future and past will be told in comic book form.
Sure. Wow. I think I'd probably try to track them down, just like Jughead does, try to figure out exactly what's going on, because that's weird. So there you go. Yeah. But yes, like you were saying, then he goes... Jughead actually tells Betty and Archie second, and Betty vaguely remembers a dream that Archie had about a bomb going off. That's from the first episode. So again, we're getting some weird continuity things here, but it's purposeful weird continuity things. As we find out later, everybody kind of respawns and reboots. Yes, Pete.
And then there was that moment when she was like, oh, my dad's been dead for years. And I kind of had this thing of like, oh, Veronica, if only that was true. Unfortunately, your dad is a living
You really want to get to the Veronica scene. Veronica tells Jughead that Hiram died the night before a quinceanera. I don't specifically remember this episode, but I think that would probably, I think that was a subtle hint that that's Archie's fault. Because if I remember correctly, like, they were coming to blows right before the quinceanera. So I think that's our first hint that Archie is actually the big bad of Rivervale, potentially.
I guess because I thought that was an interesting choice that Hiram was never a part of the show, essentially. And again, I didn't even think of it, but yeah, Archie going and killing him, he was the first victim of Archie, the killer.
I think it was also a convenient way to explain why Mark Consuelos wasn't in the episode, but it's fine. But
it just made me imagine Riverdale without Hiram, and it doesn't exist.
How did any of this happen? Yeah. Jughead wants to know who the big bad is, and then Reggie notices something that leads to the most batshit insane thing in the entire episode that, mind you, I love so much. Reggie looks at the comic books and realizes in the first 13 issues he looked like a different person because, of course, in season 1, Reggie was played by Ross Butler. Season 2 on, he was played by Charles Melton. Watching that, I was like, oh, this is a fun mention. And then it's spiraled so out of control.
Also, it's like such a thing for television shows, right? Like the whole Aunt Viv of it all. So it was really interesting to kind of like the fact that they really leaned into that moment.
Well, and it's also kind of a perfect Reggie storyline in a certain way. What were you going to say, Justin? I interrupted.
It's crazy. It's so crazy. Imagine being the first Reggie, the actor, and getting the call like, hey, man, so sorry we replaced you. But would you mind coming back and being first Reggie again?
Well, I think I could be wrong about this. Really should have looked this up. But I think it was because he was on 13 Reasons Why, and he couldn't do both shows. I think you're right. So I think my impression was he left on good terms. Like it was not he was fired.
Clearly.
Still weird, yes. Still a weird call to get.
Yeah. But awesome. Like, I don't know. Do we want to just talk about that little story now? It feels like a good little jump out. Like you said, Alex, perfect Reggie story. He's like, I don't like this guy. And the other Reggie, original Reggie, Reggie Prime, as he calls himself. He's like, I don't like this guy.
Hilarious.
And then they fight like Itchy and Scratchy.
It was a classic kind of Reggie Reggie versus Reggie. It was just hysterical. And there was kind of that crazy moment where Veronica was into it. She's like, yeah, let's do this. 2 Reggies come out. And,
I was surprised about that they went all the way with that. Like, Veronica's like, all right, Reggie sandwich, let's go.
Veronica was so funny in this episode, or at least Camila Mendez was so funny in this episode. It's definitely like not the strongest Veronica episode in the entire world, but the stuff that she was doing, grounding the 2 Reggies, coming up with a solution to be like, well, I guess we'll send one to the bachelor party and one to the bachelorette party. Very funny. The threesome moment was very funny. Her reaction when she comes home and sees that they killed each other, being like, didn't want you guys to have a duel.
Yeah,
very
these
funny.
goobers
that
killed
was
themselves.
just the classic, of course, that's what's going to happen if you leave 2 Reggies alone. I thought that was just a very hysterical reveal of like, oh, of course they shot themselves.
Yeah.
That the Reggie fighting each other stuff was just really funny, and it was a fun kind of a thing in the episode for sure.
To your point, Alex, like in an episode that is so wild, to have Veronica playing it so straight and playing it just like very like down to earth, like two Reggies, all right, you go to the party and let's maybe have a threesome. Just a thought, not going to work out, totally cool. And like, oh no, like it was just the funniest possible choice, I thought.
It was great. And it was in the middle of some actually relatively serious stuff happening, particularly with Archie. It provided a nice, funny counterpoint at the same time because the whole storyline was a goof. Like it was a dark goof because they end up in pools of their own blood by the end, which is very Rivervale and consistent with the event, but very fun at the same time. On the opposite end of the spectrum, though, Jughead goes over to Cheryl next, and Cheryl feels that Jason Blossom... What?
Yeah, that was hysterical. The moment where they're talking, they're like, yeah, but have you talked to Cheryl yet? You know, this sounds like a Cheryl problem. She could really help you with this, which was just hysterical. The fact of like, oh, you think you're in Crazy Town? Well, you got to go see the mayor. It was like, all right, I'll go see Cheryl. And the fact that, go ahead, Alex.
Well, this is a big moment for you, Alex.
This is a big moment for me, and I'm a little conflicted about this because after 5 seasons and change, Jason Blossom finally talked. They broke the bit. If they were going to break the bit at any time, I guess I'm okay with it being in the 100th episode. That's all right. But once we're back to Riverdale, no more talking. That's all I'm saying. The skeleton that, I don't know if you forgot about this, but Cheryl has her brother's skeleton.
Yep. Yeah,
in a crate, in a box. That's a real thing, not a Rivervale thing. That's a real Riverdale thing.
That's a normal thing. Yeah.
That's a normal thing that happens.
Yeah, don't even think of, that creepy doll was real too, wasn't it?
That was also real, yes. Anyway, I hope that doesn't talk. But he says, oh, hey, Jughead, I didn't know you were here. Ready to hit the course, share? Which... Great.
I will say that's the line I wrote on a piece of paper, put in an envelope 6 seasons ago. Yeah,
that's right. I remember that. Oh, that's
long
great.
shot.
Really
pulled it out.
Panned out.
I won $10 million from my Jason's first line pool.
It's weird that Vegas has been running that for so long, but congratulations.
Crazy. Pulled it out. I just want to shout out, while that was the sort of marquee line of the scene, I want to shout out Cheryl's 2 lines, according to this horror pamphlet, talking about the comic book.
Yeah.
And then later, when Jughead's like, we had a memoriam page, and she's like, no, hobo, we didn't. I was like, Cheryl's got the burns.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Great stuff. But it turns out they did, and Jughead realizes he needs info about parallel universes, so he finds out another aberration, another variant is happening here, another anomaly. When he goes to check out the philosophy of parallel universes from the library, turns out it was checked out by Dilton, who is not only alive but teaching physics at the school with Ethel as his teaching assistant.
Now this is fun. Like, this is just, I mean, how great was it? Dilton was back. Ethel is back. I mean, just really fun stuff. And also what Ethel does to Dilton was just great. I don't want to, jump ahead, but go ahead.
The moment where because I love this as well, seeing all the characters sort of coming home, very comic booky. The moment when Jughead's like, but Dilton, you died, and we see Dilton laying prone with Gargoyle King markings carved into his back. I was like, that's a crazy thing to have happen, to be like, that's normal. This thing is weird, but that's the normal thing.
Can we just because we're talking about it, one of my favorite things in the episode is when Jughead is describing the differences between Rivervale and Riverdale. And he's like, no, Riverdale is this wonderful place of cheerleaders and homecoming dances and serial killers and kissing and gargoyle kings and romance and cults. And I was like, I don't think that you're selling this as well as you.
Yeah, Jughead, I hope your best man speech at Archie and Betty's wedding's a little bit better than this, because this is leaving us wanting a bit.
Yeah. But the Dilton thing was also great because this is the first time in the series we've gotten a riff on classic comic book Dilton. Dilton was this survivalist back at the beginning, or at least most of the time he survived. He was certainly nerding out with Benjamin Button when he was playing Griffins and Gargoyles. But here we get to see mad scientist Dilton, which is something from the comics, and I thought that was really fun. Yeah. He talks him through it. they start to realize that the bomb under Betty and Archie's bed was sort of like the Big Bang. And Dilton's take is they don't need to do anything. The universes are going to be fine. It's revealed later that's not exactly what it is, but that's kind of where they sit for a little bit. And we get the very fun bachelor party sequence after that. And then at the bachelor party, we get a really sweet scene between Archie and Jughead. But I have a little bit of a caveat here I want to bring up in a second.
Well,
why don't you guys talk about this?
Well, first, I just want to back up the truck a little bit. We got some fun Reggie moments, and we already talked about the Reggie, but I wrote down a line here that I thought it was just such a classic Reggie. It was like, no, bro, you are me. Like, that is just such a hilarious thing to argue, and such a classic kind of like Reggie moment that I just want to kind of enjoy that for a little bit. And then the Reggie Prime line happened there, too. Okay, bachelor party.
I mean, I also appreciated the use of Pony at the bachelorette party. Great scene.
Yeah, you love the use of Pony.
I do. Magic Mike shout out. Love it.
But the Archie and Jughead scene, the shot of Luke Perry in this scene was so trippy, meta, and like just wild. The fact that they had that shot, the fact that it was here, and that it was just trippy.
So I want to throw something out at you. I was also, of course, anytime Luke Perry shows up on screen, I'm going to be emotionally affected by it. It's super poignant and sad to see him. I'm sure they wanted to include a shot of him. On a textual level, though, it took me out a little bit, and this is probably having too much knowledge of Riverdale, but that shot was the Veronica Archie wedding that Archie was imagining in the season 2 premiere when Fred had been shot by the Black Hood, which is in the hospital. So they took footage from a Varchie wedding and repurposed it for a Barchie wedding.
So you're mad at that?
I was a little taken out about
you can't,
it.
It's 100 episodes. It's 100 episodes, and they want to give a small nod to Luke Perry, and you couldn't.
I couched this in I'm glad to see him, and I'm glad they included him.
If your question, Alex, was like, maybe I know too much about Riverdale, the answer is a resounding yes.
What the upsetting thing for me was that they used Luke Perry in, it was just a really nice moment. And then it became the reason Archie was an asshole was a little hard for me because it was like, don't do that. Don't make Archie a fucking stupid killer because, like obviously if somebody dies, we would do, insane things to have one more day with that person. But like, I was a little like, oh God, don't do that. Don't, have somebody who is great be the reason that you're just going on a killing spree.
But I don't know. I disagree. I really liked that because like I was saying before, it really feels like that's Archie's big pain and the thing that concerns him the most, and to have that be the thing that they use and show off here in this Riverdale.
Yeah,
Riverdale
it makes
episode.
sense. It just, Luke wouldn't want that. Luke wouldn't want Archie going on a killing spree for him.
No, he wouldn't. I mean, granted, we're in Rivervale,
the father.
So I think you can go as dark as possible anyway. Also, the implication in my mind, because these things are so separate, that's the story of this week's episode. That's this issue of Rivervale that we're watching or reading or whatever you want to call it at the current time. So Archie isn't a killer going forward in Riverdale. He wasn't necessarily a killer for the previous 4 episodes. That's just the plot right now. I do agree with you, Pete, that there was a part of it that made me feel a little uncomfortable. I think you're not supposed to be happy about him doing it, mind you, but it felt like, I don't know, not to like backseat right, but it felt like it needed an extra beat that probably would have made things too complicated, which is why they probably didn't do it. But an extra beat of Jughead being able to tell Archie why Fred is not going to come back. Being like, no, that's not going to happen. You can't do this. Because that to me was like the thing that was missing a little bit, because we know he's not going to come back. To promise the possibility that he's going to come back in some way made me sad and a little bit uncomfortable when I was watching it. Yeah. And I think that was the implication anyway. Obviously, we know that's not going to happen. But again, it would have taken too much multiversal explanation to get there, and that would have overwrought the episode. But I sort of needed that to happen a little bit, personally.
But also, it was kind of interesting to see like evil Archie. I thought, the actor played it really well, and it was kind of fun to see, Archie kind of off his rocker a little bit. It fit the character, I thought.
I mean, to Archie's, to the character in that moment, he knew that the other characters were going to come back, so he was only killing them temporarily, you could say. So I don't think it was as dark of a place as
it was like a happy strangling.
Yeah, Justin, if I walked up to you and was like, hey, listen, just so you know, we're in a world where if you kill somebody, they don't come back. I want to kill you. I don't know how cool you would be with it, or how, you know what I mean?
If he showed me it happening.
Oh, really? You would let me kill you?
You'd have to
This
prove
is the
it.
greatest day of my life. I might feel like shit and dying inside, but the fact that you would be okay with me killing you, it's just, I've never been more happy in my life.
Sorry, I'm your doctor, and I'm prescribing you one murder, only one, to make you feel better.
Wow.
Last thing I will say about this whole Varchi thing, though, is certainly we get a lot of different riffs on a lot of different a lot of different ships over the course of the episode, and we pay tribute to them in different ways. I'm sure everybody who ships specific things had very complicated feelings because things go in a lot of different directions. But if you're a Varchi shipper, the two moments you get are a repurposed Varchi wedding and Archie straight up strangling Veronica. I feel like Varchis are probably not very happy right now, is my point.
Well, as much as this show was sort of taking stock and looking backward, I do think the main ships, Bughead, Varchi, didn't get a lot of play here. Just across the board.
Bughead did. Bughead got stuff.
A little bit,
arguable,
but I don't.
Stuff.
I just, it wasn't like, wow, I really enjoyed that as a Bughead fan. You know what I mean? Like we weren't like really enjoying those, because I do think they are like, well, we did that a lot. We're going forward from in the ship capacity. And I was sort of surprised. I thought I like the references to them were sort of not pleasurable, and sort of like a little bit like, it felt like it's like, move on. We're past this.
Yeah. We can talk about that more in a second. The next morning after the Bachelor and Bachelorette party, Kevin is getting everybody Alka-Seltzer. Everybody's hungover, talking about, oh, we're getting older. Ooh.
It's real. It's real.
It's real.
It really happens.
You can't bounce back as quickly as you once did.
Yeah, not me. I party every night. Cheryl reveals that her brother has been kidnapped by the Black Hood. Jughead starts to realize that things are speeding up in terms of the plot, and they immediately go to the basement where Jason was held. Sheriff Keller shoots the Black Hood, but this time it's not Hal, it's Clifford Blossom, who killed him anyway, so it's kind of like the two things mashed together.
Yeah,
Tracks.
It tracks, there you go. And then we go over to Pops, where Alice is giving a toast to Betty and Archie. Hal is also there, not the Black Hood in the capacity. Starts to say a few words when Tony comes in and reveals that Cheryl is dead. She was strangled. Shoney, also not a very big ship in this episode, but I did appreciate at least a little.
I mean, we got
a little
last
touch.
epised, we got,
Yeah, I'm good. I'm full. I'm happy.
I'm full.
I'm full. I'm full of crumbs.
Cheryl's giving, Shoney's giving was so good. I
still have leftovers, man. I still have leftovers from Shoney's giving. Betty investigates. And then Jughead starts to think maybe it's Dilton who's behind it. He's the big bad of Rivervale. It turns out he's fleeing because Riverdale and Rivervale are expanding, and he's very excited to watch the Prime and Pocket universe expanding in real time and explode. He dies. It's seemingly Ethel poisons his juice, I think she says.
Just fun Ethel stuff right there. That was just
Check
such a fun.
Juice. Check your juice, guys.
The immediate Ethel being like, I poisoned him was just hysterical. Love Ethel.
And then Ethel and Jughead figure out how to save the universes. We get Jughead laying it all out, and it's in classic Jughead fashion all over the place, and it makes sense for Riverdale, but probably for nobody else, where he says, I think he thinks it was the bomb. So it was a combination of Archie and Betty's love, Hiram's hate, creation, Jughead writing in the garage, of course. That's creation, right?
Of course, the most intense creation you could ever imagine is him being like, Jughead went to sandwich place. Oh, that's wrong. What do I do?
Destruction, which is the explosion again. Science, which is Archie had a chunk of palladium on his desk. And magic, which is Cheryl's curse, which I guess Jughead knew about from the comic books, maybe?
I think that's the implication. To have the palladium be science, I was like, well, that's a mineral at best. What did you say?
But Uthel tells Jughead that Rivervale was never meant to exist. Jughead wants to save Betty and Archie. It's their wedding day, and he realizes he needs to make out with Veronica to save the universe.
That's an excuse I've used before, too, and it rarely works. It rarely makes sense.
This was...
Veronica's in, though. She's like, hey, all right, yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
This was ridiculous.
I mean, Reggies are dead. I can, you know.
But this, to me, immediately, in a good way, lowered the stakes of the entire episode. Like, I know 2 universes are going to be destroyed, but the solution is, well, I guess we have to make out, is very silly and very fun and diffused a lot of the tension for me, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It felt very, like, 80s movie. It felt very, like... just like, or like short story, like Kurt Vonnegut short story or some kind of like teenage thing that was just being played out here. It was super funny. The Vughead becoming canon line. All right, Lodge, are we doing this or what? And I think it proved that the ships that we have in the show are important, and because this one was like watching your parents kiss.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I was like,
I mean, I just wanted to call out the line before the Vughead becoming canon because also a little less funny, but still very funny. Let's make out to save the universe. One thing, can we do it during the wedding? Because I'm not in the mood. And then Jughead being like, yeah, me neither. Very funny there. And then we get the scene, we get the big fight that we touched on earlier of Archie revealing that he is the big bad. He's doing this because he wants to see Fred back. Archie was there for ground zero of Riverdale and Rivervale. He gives this whole like very un-Archie speech, very H.P. Lovecraft. I've seen the beginning and end of the universe and all things coming together. And they fight. We get a Jughead Archie physical fight, which is a lot of fun. And in the middle of that, Betty kills Archie in her wedding dress.
Oh, nice, yeah. Cool. Come on.
That's the real
talk
Bughead
about
moment.
A Bughead moment. In her wedding dress, shooting Archie in the head. Come on, man.
Never leave a Cooper woman at the altar.
Wait, I had a question for you before I forget about this. I wanted to ask you, Justin. This probably is more appropriate for the end of the episode, but I saw a theory online that I thought was pretty accurate, comparing the plot, particularly of this episode, but also just of the Rivervale event, and you've brought this up before, to Dark, the TV show, which I haven't seen, but they brought up a lot of different parallels in terms of the parallel universes, even the end scene, everybody sitting at a dinner table. Did you pick up on that as well? Does that seem accurate and track to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was more apparent in the last episode because of the music choices, felt like referential, and the fact that it was like 3 timelines, which is a big thing in the Dark series, which is a great show. It's German, it's in German, so you have to be ready to read a lot of subtitles, but great sci-fi show if you want to pick up something that's pretty hard sci-fi, dark, and wild. Great. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely in the stew of the Riverdale creators when they're putting this event together.
All right, cool. Just wanted to check on that before I forget. But Jughead explains they need to detonate the bomb. They kiss on the bed. They make out. Pete, as a Bughead, how are you feeling at this moment?
It's nice.
It's nice. It's nice.
It's really good.
Cat's
I
fine.
think your buttons are popping. You might want to go to Jacked Buttons there.
You need a new Bughead button, brother.
And then, in the middle of their kiss, a moment we had kind of predicted, but comes in a very different way. Narrator Jughead comes in and explains they need to stop the bomb. Betty has done it before. She doesn't remember defusing the bomb that was on Polly.
I just want to share the note here that I took. I said, another Jughead. No, you ruined the moment.
Did you think at that moment that Betty was going to do something like Veronica and be like, well, there's 2 of you here?
No, I didn't think
do you ship Jug Bughead? No?
Do you ship Jug?
Jib jab, Jughead, Jug.
Jug. So narrator Jughead takes them downstairs and explains what happens. He explains when you die, you go to the Great Pop's chocolate shop in the sky, and we get a classic characters all dressed up. Sugar is playing. We get the iconic milkshake shot, Shoney together. Everybody's reading the comics. This sequence was great. I love this.
Just so cool to see, love. Clip it out, put it on loop. I'm ready to just keep watching it.
Yeah, the Pops Be in Heaven was just such a fun choice, and the whole thing was just really nice.
And you must have loved, Pete, the all-you-can-eat burgers, right?
I mean, come on. Who wouldn't love that?
Spinner rack. I mean, if Pete could design a heaven, it might just be that.
Wouldn't be far off, that's for sure.
So
the combined, realistically, you can't eat while you're reading a comic. You've got to, wash your hands, finish, and then, you know what I mean? But the idea of it is really nice.
I can't believe they didn't put the burgers in their bags and boards. It's unbelievable. You got to bag and board your burgers.
So this is the point when Jughead finds a comic between issues 95 and 96 and realizes what the other power source is. The power source is imagination. And this, I'm trying to think how to describe it, but this whole explanation here is the clearest, most meta thing of all the meta things in this episode.
Yeah.
Pointing out, granted, maybe the TV show is not going to go on forever, but the comics are going to go on forever. And that's what they're talking about here.
The characters will go on forever.
Exactly.
And this was like a highfalutin. It makes a lot of sense with Jughead. Always, he's been the narrator and the sort of writer of this show the whole time. So to have him be in the sex bunker, or as we're calling it now, the writing bunker, because the best sex is writing. He's just down there noodling.
They say the original sex was books.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly.
This idea that Jughead is going to be a nonstop story generator has me a little worried about the fate of this other universe, because it seemed like in the universe we know, Jughead sometimes had a lot of problems coming up with stories.
He says towards the end, there's a lot of stories I have to write. I guarantee you 2 issues time, Rivervale is going to be like, Jughead's sitting in the sex bunker. The walls look like this.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be a lot of the characters standing around being like, what's happening? What are we doing? And a panicked Jughead. But I also want to say Jughead and Ethel sort of together forever. Very comic booky. They are sort of the ship in the comic book universe. I thought that was a cool little slide.
Well,
reference.
Ethel is always chasing after Jughead, right? Jughead is now canonically asexual in the comic books. But yes, putting them together, I think, was a lot of fun. But just another couple of quick things before we get into there. Betty kind of doesn't get it. Jughead gets it. As we mentioned, he's going to be a living battery. He's going to have to produce and stay in the sex bunker forever. We have a very fun moment with narrator Jughead, where narrator's like, I can't do it. I'm the narrator. You're the writer.
You're the writer.
Great.
I'm the narrator.
I'm going to miss narrator Jughead. He's such a jerk. It was such a fun way.
His attitude is great. I want it. I want it all the time.
There's a line that just happens a little bit later where it's Jughead talking about saving the universe that was a little too cocky for me, that made me want to barf, but
That's very Jughead, though. He's pretentious, and he's always been pretentious, so he believes he's the only one who could save the universe. But the narrator and Better sit on the bed. They hug as the bomb goes off. Archie reanimates, starts breaking in Shining style, but the bomb doesn't go off. And then everybody kind of resets. Betty and Jughead resume their lives. They're still in Rivervale at this moment. But I thought this was a very sweet scene. Everyone is there for dinner together. Yeah. I think this points to kind of this reset point that we're going to go into Riverdale going forward, where, like you mentioned, Betty and Archie are together. Jughead and Tabitha are together. We do get to see Cheryl and Tony together, I think, other than Tony and Fags. So I think that's an indicator potentially of what's going to happen. But I thought this was nice just to bring the whole cast together in a scene like this. Is a very 100th episode thing to do.
We got the iconic line, "Come on, Betty, to spaghetti," which I think will really continue on.
Little, Betty spaghetti. Yeah, yeah.
Shout out. You got to shout out to your origins, That's...
Yeah, League of Their Own, you know what I mean? Come on.
Mm-hmm. Come on. So then we get a loop. Jughead and Tabitha move into the apartment together. The loop begins again. Jughead keeps typing the stories. And then we get, meanwhile, back in Riverdale. Now, before we get to this last scene, I do have a question for you. So the way the words appear on screen, meanwhile, back in Riverdale, it looks like typewriter writing, right?
Yeah.
So do you think, I don't think they're going to get into this, but it feels like the indication here is that these are stories being told in Riverdale the same way that Jughead is telling the stories over in Rivervale. At least that's what I took away from it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I do think the other reference I wanted to make sure to say, it's been no secret that this show was inspired by Twin Peaks a great amount from the beginning. But if anybody out there watched the season 3 of Twin Peaks, it was on Showtime a few years ago, this moment felt very much like a couple moments that happened later in that season of Twin Peaks, and especially like multiple dimensions and characters transgressing or transferring between different dimensions to try to affect the storyline. This whole thing, I was like, what a great, cool way to sort of bring it all back home.
If you're going to do Meanwhile back in Riverdale, you might as well also be like, Toffee is fine. Like you really on opportunity.
Cat's fine.
Cat's fine.
Maybe we should rewatch that, because maybe in very tiny type at the bottom of that title card, there was Cat's fine.
That's all you need to do. If you're going to give us a Meanwhile back in Riverdale, I mean, come on.
Yeah, it doesn't cost extra to type the typewriter a couple more letters. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's a little extra with the ink. Meanwhile, what
do you pay by the letter?
Yeah, just the ink. What about Meanwhile back in Cat's briefcase?
That would work too. Anything works.
And I don't know if I've ever explained this, but a cat briefcase is where there's cats in there.
The cat can't move, you asshole. This is so inhumane. Stop.
And there's food in one end and a litter box in the other side. It's mostly for transporting the cat. It's not like
I don't want to back up Justin here too much, but if you have a better idea how to get a cat from one place to another, I'd love to hear it, Pete.
You got to make it big enough so the cat can move around, and also it shouldn't be shitting and eating. And it's not.
It's a closed universe. It's like a Schrodinger's cat's briefcase. Is the cat in there? Maybe. What do you think? It is both in and outside of the cat briefcase.
So back at Riverdale, we cut back to the scene at the end of season 5. Barchi is on the bed. They get a phone call from somebody. Let's break it up a little bit, but says, "Get out of the house, Betty. Listen, there's a bomb under her bed. You have to go now." Jughead is typing in the garage. The bomb goes off, and then Jughead's ears are ringing. I know I just rushed through that, but I just wanted to get out both of those pieces of information. One big thing that we're going to be dealing with going forward is Jughead has now some sort of hearing loss from this bomb. So that's something that we're going to pick up on.
I think I do too. That was fucking way too loud.
That ring was strong.
You didn't need to do that. You didn't need to do that.
But who do you think's calling them?
Ethel.
Who do you think was on the phone? Ethel? It was a man's voice, I'm pretty sure.
It was maybe one of those voice changer things.
Maybe.
Do you think we're going to find out? I think it was a cross-dimensional phone call.
So here's the thing. We don't know who it is, but somebody from Rivervale is coming over to Riverdale. They're not totally done with it. Some character that existed in that world is going to actually end up in the Riverdale world.
Let's be Sabrina.
Well, my suspicion is that is whoever called them on the phone. Again, it feels like a male's voice. I think purposely you can't tell exactly who it is. My best guesses would either be Hal, right? Or potentially Dilton, though he died.
Yeah. But as we know, characters in Rivervale come back. I agree. Like, I don't think we're going to get a double. It would be very weird if there was a double, like two Reggies, essentially, in the world of Riverdale. But I feel like Dilton makes the most sense to me, and just fold him into the show. So much of the story has been about Hal that I feel like having Hal back would be
But I do think there would be something interesting if it is good Hal, non-Black Hood Hal, coming into the middle of this thing where we're setting up an Alice Frank relationship, just as things start to heat up with them a little bit. Hal shows
You're close.
up.
but not correct. It's Jughead's dad because F Palace. That's why.
I mean, that would be amazing, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think.
No, don't say you don't know what's going to happen.
I don't know what's going to happen. I have no
Come on, man. Skeet.
What were you just doing there? If you say his name 5 times in a mirror, he has to show up. Is that it?
I was just singing the song.
Basically. Now, because what other options do we really have for a River? Because I will say there's a big, there's a lot of space for a villain in Riverdale currently.
Well, we're going to potentially have TBK coming back, maybe. I mean, I think we'll see that. Also, just a new mystery. Like, there's plenty of episodes left. We don't have an exact episode count, but assuming that there's at least 13 more episodes of the season to go, if not 14 or more. So there's plenty of time for them to do something insane.
I want to circle back to something we're not spending enough time on.
The cat briefcase?
No, you both wish. Why wasn't the audio wasn't the audio person able to just have it be loud, but not like it was too loud? That was too loud.
The explosion?
Like that. Yeah, that made me not want to watch Riverdale. It was so loud. Like, it was like, fuck you, that's too loud.
All the things that have happened over the course of 100 episodes, the thing that takes you out is a loud ringing.
That was too loud. That hurt.
I also like you're saying it was a mistake. Like, the sound guy was like turned up too much. They were like,
well, like somebody should have had a discussion. I don't want somebody to be fired. I don't, but that was. There was no reason for that to be that loud.
Because what if, going back to Pete's sound notes, we'll definitely forward onto the audio department of Riverdale. But let me throw out, what if we had an evil Archie come over?
That would be super weird and interesting. Like you said, I don't know if we're going to see a double necessarily, but that would, whatever it is, it's going to be weird. It's going to be fun. Madeline Petch described it as funny. So your mileage.
What did she describe as funny? The next
the
step?
Rivervale person who comes over.
Oh, okay.
What about Jason Blossom?
Could be Jason Blossom. I think we're done with him for the moment, though. I don't know.
Is this? I can't believe I'm taking this bait, but did you want to then plug your unbelievable interview that you got to do?
Oh,
that
thanks,
I'm
Pete.
extremely jealous of.
Sorry, I did interview Madeline
Pete
Petch.
is sick.
Yes. I interviewed her for the last episode. It was very nice. It was a very nice chat.
I can't believe you talked to Cheryl, man.
I'm sorry, man. She did. I will mention, I didn't put this in the interview, obviously, because I don't put stuff about myself in the interviews, but she did call me out right at the top of the phone call where I got on and I was like, hey, this is Alex from Decider. And she was like, oh, I know you. I've seen your little posts all over the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. Calling you out. Maybe you should take her note and tone it down a little bit. You know what I mean?
Wait, what did she mean by your little posts? Like,
his Riverdale After Dark pictures that he's always
no, like my tweets that I'm
about showing.
Yeah, or whatever.
He was always stirring the pot, causing trouble, spoiling episodes before we've seen them, giving us picks that kind of like get us thinking.
Yeah, sorry to get you thinking, Pete.
Yeah, Pete's brain is always in neutral. Why are you trying to
I'll
gear
mention,
it up?
Pete, more apropos of this episode, I also talked to Cole Sprouse this past week, which was very nice as well. And he's very reflective. One thing that I will mention that came out of that interview.
This just makes me very upset because I know you didn't ask the right questions.
What do you think that I didn't ask?
Do you love Betty?
Yeah, like why were you like, listen, the show was born and raised on, but that has to be hard.
100%. I was like, hey, Cole, listen, first of all, I was raised by Bughead.
Yeah,
I just wanted to let you know that. No,
it means a lot to me.
Bughead.
Like how.
I mean, I'll tell you, of course I talked to him about Bughead. I talked to him about Jabitha. Both of those things because they play into the episode.
Did you talk to Cheryl about how she's the greatest and like how, you know, like...
Man, I don't know why you don't get these interview opportunities. The thing that I'll say about Cole talking about Jabitha and Bughead without trying to necessarily start anything. First of all, he was clearly like, he loves working with Aaron Westbrook. Like, he was straight up about that. He was like, it's my best days on set are the ones when I get to work with her. She's a true professional. I have such a great time working with her. And he also talked about, we're getting into areas where, Pete, I don't think you're necessarily going to be happy with these answers, but he was like, yeah, I think like Betty and Jughead ran very hot and cold versus Jughead and Tabitha.
That's what I said.
Jughead and Tabitha are much more even. It's a much
cold.
Much more adult.
Nobody wants to see that shit.
Much more adult relationship, much more steady. They're supportive of each other.
Did you ask him about Big Daddy? Like, what did you really talk to him about?
No, I didn't ask him about Big Daddy.
Come on, man.
I also asked him about Bughead and just playing that moment on the bed. And he was like, yeah, we thought it was very important to pay tribute to where the show has been before.
That does not sound good for us moving forward.
For you.
I don't want to read between the lines too much, and I don't want to start anything here. Pete.
We live between the lines, Alex. Let's hear it.
Here's the thing. I have always said, like, you know, there's plenty of show left. Anything can happen. Who knows what's going to happen? Bughead is part of the story. After talking to Roberto when we had him on the podcast, and he was like, you guys don't, like, specifically to you, Pete, you guys don't love Jabitha.
And we're like, no.
And he's clearly all in on that story. And then talking to Cole about it and the tone of voice when he was talking about Bughead versus the tone of voice when he was talking about Jabitha, he's an actor on the show. He's not a producer, mind you. He's not a writer or anything like that. But he's clearly so excited about this new mode of a relationship that he gets to play in. He has the sound bites down for Bughead and knows how to talk about it. Like, I don't think there was negativity there or anything, but I do think coming off of those interviews, and also, mind you, Lily Reinhart saying on an Instagram Live, and then also Cole to me saying they have these 7-year contracts and they think they're heading towards the home stretch is the words that he used. I don't think we're going to see Bughead in any major capacity.
How dare
at
you?
least until the end of the show.
Well, it was fun doing this podcast with you guys.
Here's what I mean. This is just my opinion. This is just my opinion. This is just my opinion. This is just based, again, on reading between the lines. I don't think, like, it's entirely possible they could have things going the way they're going. Let's say it ends in season 7, right? They could have things going through the rest of the show all the way through season 7 and then do, like, classic end of show stuff where Betty and Jughead are like, no, it's you. It's always been you, and get back together. That absolutely can happen. There's 100% a possibility of that. But I think just because they are enjoying working in this new mode with Jughead
Do
and
they
Tabitha,
even watch the show?
Okay.
I mean, what the fuck, man?
I think they're enjoying playing with this new relationship. And I do think, again, fair to be wrong. Like, they may swerve like they do in classic Riverdale fashion.
You never
next episode.
know.
But that's my impression right now, just based on these interviews, is I'm surprised. I thought they were going to go back to Bughead in some capacity this season. Now I'm kind of convinced that maybe not. I think, and also based on this episode,
I've been saying maybe not for a while, if you remember, because it's Archie's time in the sun.
I do think, based on this episode, even though most of it takes place in Rivervale, I do think, and again, I'm very surprised about this, I think they're really going to try with Archie and see how it works long term. And same thing with Jabitha, and they're going to stick with that. Potentially Veggie as well, and have less mixing up than they've been doing. So, but we'll see. Sorry, Pete.
So there's no hope for the future is what you're saying.
Oh, my God.
Hold on to hope. There's definitely hope. It's just maybe not coming for like a little while. But that's the good thing about hope is you can just hold it like a little candle.
Side note, don't hold candles. All right, before we wrap up here, who was the MVP of this episode?
Who cares? I mean, what the fuck, man?
Oh, come on.
Come on. Pete,
come on.
It doesn't matter. If they're not going to do that, I mean, what's...
I'm not saying they're not going to do that. I'm just
That's
expressing
exactly
my
what
opinion.
you fucking said, man.
I'm expressing my opinion. I don't write the show. I don't produce the show. I have no knowledge of any episodes beyond this episode. Justin,
MVP,
do you want to take it? MVP of the episode?
MVP of the episode. I mean, it really is the writers of Riverdale and everyone that puts the show together is the sort of the MVP. This an episode that really looks back so hard. But as for the characters in the show, I think we got to give it to our guy Jughead. This was getting to see Cole Sprouse play multiple versions of the character he's played for so long, and really the whole story flowed through him. It's fun to watch him, especially R.I.P. Jughead, the narrator. Great version of Jughead.
Pete, you got an MVP yet?
Yeah, Ethel.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. All right. I'll throw it out to Jason Blossom then for finally getting a line after 5+ seasons. Very happy to see that. Hope it never happens again, but it was very fun. It was a great moment. And folks, that is it for this week's podcast. Riverdale will be returning March 6th. 2022. As usual, maybe we'll try to do a couple of episodes between now and then, depending on promo materials and other things that come up. But of course, we have plenty more podcasts to check out in the meantime. Check them all out at comicbookclublive.com. You can support our podcast, patreon.com/comicbookclub. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Crowdcast on YouTube. Come hang out. We would love to chat with you about Riverdale. At Riverdale Dark on Twitter, at Riverdale After on Instagram, Riverdale After Dark on Facebook. Until next time, we'll see you after dark.
Yes, what a time to be alive!
Or not.
Oh, Pete, it'll be fine.